All right. So, yeah, back to kind of what we've been talking about. So, this one we're going to go over project file information. So, again, just kind of going through design, drawing, sheet models, what those spaces are for, what goes in each one of them, why we put the things we do in them, and where they go. File federation, discussing what that is and why to use it, why it's important, why it's a little bit different than how we do it now versus when we did it a few years back. Those reasons. Container files, again, defining those, both design containers, production containers, why and when we use those. And then I think one of mine, and you'll the other presenters, they'll chime in on this, I'm sure, at some point, of maintenance of files and how important that is, and how frustrating it can get for other people if they're not maintained, because it does affect your whole team. So really kind of walking through all those, and really what this graphic kind of displays is files that aren't federated, and files that don't have container files or aren't organized, look like that. And then after, once we start getting used to it, the after is really what we want it to look like. So I'm going to dive into the design drawing and for design models, sheet models, and drawing models. So first, what we're going to go through is just kind of the design models, referencing container files and reference files. That's really what the design models for. And again, we're talking more on production side of things, but also from a design model standpoint too, of if I am designing in a file where I have corridors, or I have geometry, or I have something like that. Same thing if I need to reference in like a working container file, which we'll talk about later as well, or any other reference files that I need to have in there that I'm working with, and then keeping that clean at the end of the day. 2D model and 3D model, or 2D model or a 3D model for these design models. Again, depending on the use of the file, what that file is used for. Is it a terrain, or is it everything else? This file is also would be geolocated, and with that, using the geocoordinate systems through CDOT, the CDOT coordinate systems that are offered, utilizing that, making sure that that's set in your file if you have a different coordinate system that you're using, other than like a central state plane or a northern state plane, something like that. You want to make sure that those are set. A scale set by user based on the purpose of the file. Again, is it a plan sheet, like a 50 scale, in that scale itself? How that works. Sheet, and again, may not be present in all sheet files. What that means is, right, if I have a sheet file where maybe I have a spreadsheet, and maybe that's put into a drawing model and a sheet model, or how that works, sometimes you're not going to always have a design file or a design model in the file. And again, sheet and drawing files may not be present. It kind of goes back up to the first part that I was talking about. If you have just a design model that you're actually doing design work in, you probably won't have a drawing and a sheet file with that. The last one, attach only what is needed. Again, you're going to need different references. You're going to need different files as you're going through design. That's just how we work. That's how we've always worked. Everybody is an industry. The thing that's different with this is you want to make sure that you're keeping those files clean. So again, kind of talking about a working container file. So having, having a working container file. So as such, of just having a file that has different references in them. For instance, like this one, I've got my topo file, my planimetrics file in there. I have my hydraulics, I have my right-of-way, and you'll see I have two different hydraulics, which we'll get into that later. But as you can see, this is a file that I can use. It's my working container file So I can put all the reference files that I want in here that are not data related, right? If I don't want to put a terrain file in here, because if I'm in a geometry file and that geometry is associated to the terrain, that terrain has to exist within that geometry file. So I want to make sure that these are non-data related. The hydraulics I have in there because if I'm a roadway, I'm not connecting the drainage to the roadway. If I'm in a drainage, I am connecting. So it's kind of understanding what some of those elements are. But again, like this would be a working container file where it's just blank and it just has references. And then I would utilize that in my design files as a nested to one. So that's really what for a working container file and kind of going through that, those instances. So that's design model. For drawing model, again, that will reference, so based on production, that's going to reference in our design model that we have. If we have containers, we have different things in there. Again, I'll get into when we get into the containers, what those reference depths are, what we recommend for that. This is a 2D model, drawing model is referencing your design model. So even if you have 3D elements, different things like that in your design model will come across as 2D model. This is going to be, again, clipped and oriented based on the name boundaries when you do create those name boundaries. Again, we'll go through that in the plant production side of things on creating those name boundaries, how that all works. This is also geolocated as a design model is because it's in that space. The scale's based on the name boundary. That name boundary you have clipped different things with for that drawing model. This is also where sheet annotations can be, right? They can be placed in here with north arrow, scale bar, profile grid, different things like that. They can be in here. I'm not going to say that we recommend one way or the other as a best practice. I think those are some of the things we'll work through with the region because they can be in drawing models. You can have, you could also have your scale bar in a sheet model. Your profile grid can be in your border, different things like that. So we want to make sure that we go through those elements. For the sheet model itself, then we're nesting in the drawing model within that production file. So then that drawing model is then referenced in there. This is where the title block cell, it will go through that in the plan production. Right now you see it says replaced with border reference. There's reasons for this as we go through, and there's reasons for how the plan production operates with field data versus sheet index. And I know that some of the pain that people have gone through with the sheet index. Again, this is a 2D model, not georeference, because this is at 0, 0. It's a lot like Autodesk. If some of you are familiar with Civil 3D of sheet space, model space, it's similar. It is not scale, it's a 1-to-1. So it kind of is to 1-to-1, but in here, this is where you don't have any annotations except, again, if you have the self or the title block, which we're replacing with references. If you want general notes or legends, put them in here. Again, scale bar, tables, all those different things can go into the sheet space. So wanting to make sure that everyone understands what those are. So really kind of going through those sheet spaces, wanted to get through that. So Sahar, do you want to go ahead and stop recording before we go into file federation?